So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio.
Welcome, welcome. It is great to be with you. Coming up, we're going to be discussing the royal baby, the new royal baby, the baby's name, and what the significance is for the royal couple, Meghan and Prince Harry. We're also going to be discussing why you shouldn't take birth control. In addition to that, we'll cover an amazing story. This woman was pregnant with twins, and then she got pregnant again at the same time. I will share with you about that and much more. Did you know that was possible? Well, stay tuned. I want to discuss also this idea of how I really believe today that the instincts of children are being truly destroyed. And when I say instincts, I mean, in part just the natural instincts that a person has, but also those instincts that are developed through ultimately our senses, that we have an instinct for something based on an experience. And I want to kind of give a couple examples of this. One example is kids today. Everyone gets a participation award and trophy, let's say for playing Little League, baseball, or soccer. As long as you show up, you're there, even if you're terrible, you still get a trophy. So kids learn, doesn't matter how hard you try. Actually, it might not even matter that you show up to the games or to practice. If your name is on that roster, you get a participation reward. Another example of this, I remember when I was in high school, I think I was like a freshman, and one of the seniors that I danced with was talking about how she had some major state testing going on. And she said, it's really easy. I'm not worried. I'm not going to study. And she said something along the lines of, as long as I, mark something down on the Scantron or something like this, she said, I'll still get at least a base level score of a B. So I'm not really worried. I can get away with just, marking things down and I'll still pass. Something of that nature. She knew how the system worked. And as long as she showed up and did something, even if she got it wrong on her Scantron, then that's okay. She would still do well enough. And, I was thinking about this, and let's take it back to a narrower level. Let's take it back to kids and where this is really starting, because I think that this is fascinating when we ponder. Today, I think that we live with a lot of what we would call bubble wrap children. You can't play outside because you could trip and fall and hurt yourself. You can't play outside because you'll get dirty. You can't touch the door because you could slam your finger in the door. Now, all of these things, yes, you can get dirty. Yes, you could slam your finger in the door. Yes, you could get hurt. But how is a kid going to get to know that some of these things could happen if at a certain point they don't get to experience things? What we're talking about is essentially learning cause and effect. Cause and effect of showing up and doing well determines what sort of reward you would receive for playing a sport. Cause and effect would be, okay, you keep playing with the door, and oops, yeah, you slammed your hand in the door. You learned I shouldn't play with the door anymore. I was on the phone with a friend of mine, a great mom, a couple months ago, and she says, hey, don't do that, to her 5-year-old son. And she said, hey, don't do that. He doesn't listen. He falls. He gets hurt. And she kind of chuckles and she goes, well, I told you not to do that. I told you were going to get hurt. He still had to experience it to see that in order not to do that, he's going to get hurt. Now, people might make the same argument. Well, yeah, let people, be free, do whatever they want in life. No, I'm talking about basic, simple things. Such as, slamming your finger in a door. Or tripping and falling when you're playing with a stick. There are a lot of different things that could occur where people have to learn, specifically kids, cause and effect. When you do X, then Y will happen. When you keep playing with the door, then you will slam your finger in the door potentially, depending on how you play with it. So here's the deal. What happens when kids never get hurt? What happens when kids never learn cause and effect? Well, this is actually something that's happening. Now, I could go off on a whole side tangent about how these are the same exact kids at times who are struggling with identity disorder, especially young boys, because they're being told they can't do anything and they feel like the oddball out when other kids get to play and play hard, yet they're told that they should be afraid of the world. And they never know cause and effect that, yeah, I can get hurt, but I can learn to control my aggression, learn to control the type of experience I'm going to have. You see, this is what's interesting, too, with these, I think, same kids who aren't learning cause and effect. They then begin to believe that although they're afraid of certain things and of trying things, at the same time they're told the sky's the limit and that you can have and do anything and everything. In fact, we're going to be talking about college graduates tomorrow. Maybe you're graduating or you know someone who is. We're going to talk about what should be discussed around graduation time, from jobs to career aspirations. But this is something that I think also is important when we discuss little kids and cause and effect. There's confusion about outcomes. And so take this whole idea and throw a kid who has had little experience with cause and effect, a cell phone, a tablet, on a computer. Now, technology has zero sensory, really cause and effect, essentially. There's no sensory experience of, ouch, I hurt my finger by putting my finger in the socket of the power outlet. There isn't. So what's happening is you have these bubble-wrapped children who are then not experiencing any type of physical cause and effect, harm or danger, and then you give them a cell phone or a tablet with absolutely no limitation on it. Now, sure, you can say, hey, Bobby, don't go to things that you shouldn't be going to. Don't watch shows that you know Mommy and Daddy wouldn't want you watching. Don't talk to strangers. Okay, sure, you can say that to them, but there's next to no cause and effect physically that they've experienced. And then take it online, and it's almost too late. There's so much confusion also, especially if under the age of 13. There's a huge lack of inability to self-regulate and moderate any type of behavior. And that inability to self-regulate even continues on up until the year of about 25, which is why teenagers should really have limited and guarded and guided interaction with technology. So what's happening is that kids are then, and when I say kids, I truly mean kids. We're talking about tweens, high schoolers, engaging in online relationships with strangers and people they know in ways that they shouldn't be. They're posting photos they shouldn't post. They're sharing feelings with, at times, outright strangers who are preying upon their responses. And when I say preying, I'm not talking about preying about feelings that are shared that are difficult situations. I'm talking about strangers and even non-strangers preying upon the emotional feelings shared online to get what they want from other people. You also have the exposure of pornography. It's just an image. What's the big deal? That's what so many adults say as well. You have the overuse and outright addiction to technology. And then you have kids who are struggling, and adults to be quite frank, with the lack of sleep. In fact, tomorrow we're going to be discussing here on Trending with retired Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman the impact that the lack of sleep has had on our great nation, from tweens to adults, especially kids. It's important to see all of these different things that are occurring online. There's no cause and effect. There's no regulation. There's no moderation. Kids haven't learned any sort of cause and effect outside of the technological realm, in the physical reality, in the physical sphere, that they're not learning self-control. They're not learning that if I do things, I could get hurt. So their brain isn't in any way being trained to be cautious in the right ways, to recognize when they've done something wrong. I think that the big takeaways on this whole idea of how we're losing instinctual reactions from a very young age is, I'll start with this. Studies have been done showing that the one instinct that we really do know that a baby has when the baby's born, and it's really only one since we've been studying this, is the instinct to nurse. In fact, a newborn baby, when born, if you place the baby on the mom's abdomen, will actually, depending on how much exposure to various prescription drugs during the pregnancy and during the labor and delivery the baby has, especially the less it has, the baby can actually and will actually army crawl up to the mother's chest in order to start eating. Total instinct. In fact, it was incredible. My baby girl did this. It was fascinating. Totally, the baby can crawl before it's even had any interaction. So we know that this instinct to eat is one instinct that the baby has. However, what's been stated in some literature over the last 20 years or so is that we actually don't know what other instincts children are born with. Why? Because of such extreme cautionary parenting. That we're not seeing how kids develop cause and effect, and we're not seeing how their instincts begin to work out. It used to be, we know that kids would grow up on farms, on the land. And yes, there was a higher rate of child mortality, but also it's believed and understood that kids knew a little bit better how to handle themselves with nature. So all of this brings back the question, how can we be better yet again at fostering instinctual reactions and developing a greater understanding among kids with regard to cause and effect, and how can we take this into technological use, especially recognizing that kids need moderation. They even need to learn cause and effect when it comes to technology. So part of this is recognizing that we have to develop clear and lasting boundaries for kids over the age of 13 when they're on technology, and emphasizing, following the research, that under the age of 13, kids shouldn't really have technology in their hands. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie here on Relevant Radio. Coming up, we're going to be discussing the royal baby, what the baby's name is, what it was a girl, was named after. Catholic Order of Foresters is proud to sponsor the Relevant Radio studio line. For information about employment opportunities and flexible premium life insurance plans, visit relevantradio.com/forester.
So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
If you didn't catch it, I posted on Instagram yesterday 30 reasons why you shouldn't live together before marriage. Check it out and please share it, because this is something that a lot of people don't really take seriously. They don't see what the big deal is. So check it out. I could make another one of those because we're going to discuss why you shouldn't take birth control, and I'll give you 5 reasons. Maybe I'll turn that into 30 reasons coming up here on social media. But here's the deal. I want to talk about the royal baby. Have you heard the great news? I always love it when a new royal is born or something major happens, because there's actually a person dedicated to making royal proclamations. And guess what? He even uses a nice old-fashioned scroll. He has a fancy hat, cute little outfit. I mean, I don't know, you call him a court gesture, whatever you want. But these things happen. Now, I don't know, because Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have been rather I don't know what you want to call it. Have they betrayed the crown? I don't know. Whatever you want to say. I don't know if they got the royal proclamation this time because they've left so-called the royal family, or they've been kicked out. Whatever you want to believe or discuss. But here's the deal. They just had their second baby, Lilibet Diana of Mountbatten, Windsor. Now, it's fascinating because her name, she's named after, that is Queen Elizabeth, her great-grandmother, 95 years old, taking the name Lilibet, the childhood nickname. But also the middle name she's named after her own grandmother, Prince Harry's mother, the well-known and tragic individual who died, Princess Diana. Now, here's what's fascinating about these two. They keep going on and on about how they don't want their private life to be made public. Yet again, they go on and share private testimonies about their family and everyone else. But here's a really big deal. They actually have decided that they're not having any more children. 2, and that is it. It's not a 1 and done, it's a 2 and done, which a lot of people go today for that 2 and done. Hoping for a boy, shooting for a boy and a girl, and then that's it. Sometimes they'll go for 3 if they didn't get exactly what they want. Very, very common. But here's the question. How are they going to make that happen? Well, like most people, there are really 3 things that usually people do, and we could even say 4 things. Number 1, a hysterectomy. Number 2, a vasectomy. Number 3, birth control, contraception for years through the fertile period of a woman's life. That will, by the way, completely mess up your hormones and lead you to have to do some sort of hormonal supplementation often later on. And number 4, the fail-safe, abortion, when birth control, your planned type of birth control, one of the 3 I just mentioned, doesn't work. So this is what it brings me to. The question of why shouldn't you take birth control? Because this is what most women at the end of the day are choosing to do in their lives. And many women are being put on birth control as a band-aid to cover up and address various health issues. In fact, someone was really peeved with me, I think Friday, Monday, I don't remember what day it was, because I said something negative about birth control. But here's the reality. I am sick and tired of women who aren't looking at it for the purpose of birth control to prevent pregnancy. I'm sick and tired of women who are having various health issues being put on the pill. Oh, you're a woman, so let's just put you on a pill because you have a cycle. Good grief. You know how many women from polycystic ovarian syndrome to severe migraines to other major irregularities and acne, you name it, aren't being properly treated with good medicine because for some reason, and hint, hint, the doctors are being paid off to prescribe more birth control. These girls are just being put on birth control and years later are having major health issues as a result of the birth control and as a result of the main underlying issue never being treated. So many women are on birth control initially for that reason. Others are on it for the same reason that perhaps this is what Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are going to do to prevent more children, to make sure that that doesn't happen. So here are 5 reasons, and we're going to break them down, why you shouldn't take birth control. Number 1, hormonal birth control, from the pill to various types of hormonal contraception, are group 1 carcinogens. That's right, cancer-causing agents. We'll come back to that. Number 2, birth control, it actually changes who you're attracted to while you're on it and who you'll interact with. Number 3, almost all forms of hormonal birth control function as an abortifacient. Number 4, hormonal birth control also causes blood clots in many women, hypertension, and many other issues. And number 5, when you're on hormonal birth control, interpersonally, this is another thing it does. It tells men that they can use you without accepting or committing to you, and that they can abandon you when they feel ready. That's exactly what it teaches people. And so those are 5 very strong reasons not to take hormonal birth control. But let's break them down. Number 1, birth control, hormonal contraception, the pill, to many others, made up of synthetic forms of estrogen and progesterone, are group 1 carcinogens. In fact, I'll just list a handful of resources. In 2011, even the USA Today recorded and reported breast cancer cases from 1980 to 2010. In 1980, we had 640,000, and in 2010, 1.6 million. This is according to the University of Washington's research. Now, this is important to recognize because why? Well, it's causing breast cancer. It's causing many types of cancer, in fact. So let's talk a little bit more about how it's a group 1 carcinogen. The United Nations actually recognizes the pill as a cancer-causing carcinogen. In fact, if we were to look at the cancer research coming out of the United Kingdom, it says breast cancer is more common among women who take hormone replacement therapy and the pill for long periods. By the way, let's add into that, hormone replacement therapy includes what many people are engaging in today for cross-sex hormones if they identify as transgender. And guess what? We're giving these cross-sex hormones to children. In fact, in the state of Oregon, you only have to be 15 years old to not have parental consent. So this is another example of hormonal birth control and cross-sex hormones being a group 1 carcinogen. Yet another example, just to make this clear, even Time Health and Family study showed a, quote, curious link between birth control and prostate cancer. That's right. Your birth control, ladies, can impact, gentlemen, listen up, a man's prostate. How? Well, we've learned that through studies such as the University of Colorado, and many others in France and worldwide, that in fact the birth control is being flushed or is passing through when women uses the restroom into our water supply, essentially. And so not only have they studied that we have hermaphrodite fish who are being exposed to high levels of birth control in the water there in Colorado, but also us people as well, and men. I definitely have a clear, good filter because I don't want this exposure in my home. It's a total side note. But the Journal of the National Cancer Institute also noted, quote, oral contraceptive use has been associated with an increase in the risk of breast cancer in young women. In 2003, the Columbia University study showed the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences added estrogen from the pill to its list of known cancer-causing agents. What did I give you? Just 5 resources? Well-renowned universities, academic journals, even the United Nations, recognizing that the hormonal contraception is a group 1 carcinogen. I was maybe told you this story before, I was getting my teeth cleaned, close to 10 years ago now. And we had the same family dentist for a number of years. And the dental hygienist said, hey, what are you doing right now? And I think I was working in the crisis pregnancy center at the time. And, here she is with sharp instruments in my mouth. And she always wants to chat when she's cleaning my teeth. I've never been able to understand why. Not only does she want to chat, she can talk all she wants, but why I'm expected to respond. Love the woman, but I don't know how to respond to you and you've got instruments in my mouth. Well, you're trying to talk back. Well, basically, that's what I'm trying to do is I'm telling her, basically, I don't know what she thinks about abortion, but I help women who are considering having abortion to have other options. Long story short, we end up coming, because we should always be tactful when abortion comes up. I end up talking about how abortion can actually be a cause of breast cancer. It can. In fact, we should talk about that again here soon. And we end up discussing contraception as well. And she said, what's interesting? She said, the receptionist who's been here for like 4 years? I said, yeah. And she said, she started with us right after high school. She said, well, she's about 20, 22 years old. And she said, she's no longer working with us. And I said, why? And she said, well, she got breast cancer. I said, really? She said, yeah. And she said, and you know what she told us that the doctor told her? The doctor told her this. Listen, I know it's not popular to say this, but not a lot of women know that hormonal contraception can be a cause of cancer. She had no idea. She had been on it for nearly 10 years since the age of 13. Many women, again, put on it for... Some girls want bigger boobs. Some people want to regulate their cycle. They want various symptoms to go away. Some want to prevent pregnancy. Well, this girl, for almost 10 years, had been lied to that this was going to help her achieve what she wanted, and she was never told, or maybe she never read the insert, that birth control causes cancer. And it was destroying her life. And so here's a simple example of how one person, a dental hygienist, knew this, but it was a little known, kept secret that even the doctor was very careful about sharing what could be the cause of this young girl's cancer. And he knew it because he saw she had nearly a 10-year record of being on birth control. This is the truth of the culture we live in. It's a lie. People think birth control will help them achieve their hopes and their dreams, but in reality, it's robbing so many women, whether young or in later years, of their livelihood, their life. The second reason I mentioned is that birth control changes the type of person that you're attracted to. Now, this is fascinating. Oh gosh, we could spend a whole hour just talking about hormonal contraception and pheromones. If you don't know what a pheromone is, it's basically this complementarity biologically that occurs through chemical chemistry, essentially, between men and women. And what happens here is that it's a complementarity and a type of smell that we do not perceive, but that is given off between people of fertile years. Now, what happens is if you are in your fertile years and you are not on the pill, the type of person that you would be interested in through your pheromones unknowingly is someone who would have a good immune system that was different from yourself. That's really how you determine the good immune system, because it would be different from yours so that you wouldn't produce, say, offspring, a child that would have various health issues, because you're looking for someone different in terms of their genetic complementarity. Now, when you're on contraception, your body's in a state of what's referred to as pseudo-pregnancy. Your body's pretending it's pregnant. That's part of the trick of how it doesn't get pregnant, if used correctly, when you're on various types of hormonal birth control. Now, what happens, just like when you're pregnant, is there's a disinterest in things such as intimacy, but there's also a disinterest in people of different immune systems. You look for someone who's similar. Why? Because when you're pregnant, you want to rely on someone who's dependent, that you're more familiar with, someone who has a similar immune system and so forth as you, family members, for example. And so what's happening is that we're seeing people who have been on the pill for years. Let's say they get married or they move in with or they're dating someone for a long period of time, and boom, they decide they want to start having children. Well, they get off of the pill, and next thing you know, there's less interest in that person they had been with for a number of years. Why? Because they're lacking the pheromonal complementarity that is naturally supposed to build biological chemistry between two people before they tie the knot, they get married, they have kids. It's fascinating. In fact, so many marriages today and relationships are falling apart when people finally decide they want to stop using the pill, they want to get married. And so what happens is, one, many people have a difficult time having children after having been on the pill and playing with their potential pregnancy hormones for so long. But number two, they're also not as interested. And so what we're seeing is there's this massive crisis in our culture today that when someone can't have a child with someone else, the marriage is being rocked to a very significant degree, as you would expect. But you add the confusion about the change in pheromonal complementarity between the two people, and everything is significantly impacted in that interpersonal dynamic that was already impacted from day one, the moment she started taking the pill. Now, it's fascinating to add this from a male perspective as well. And if you're just joining us, you're listening to Trending with Timmerie. I'm talking about 5 reasons why you shouldn't take birth control. And we're discussing how it changes who you're attracted to. Now, for men, this is what's really interesting. So there's a study done. It's known as the T-shirt study. And the study basically went in and addressed men. You can find this in the National Center for Biotechnology Information from the United States National Library of Medicine. Now, the Fertile Shirt study did this. They took a group of men, they hooked them up to all these brain scans, and they showed them a bunch of images of women. Everyone from your plain Jane to your gorgeous supermodel, and objectively gorgeous supermodel, because some of like the whole supermodel things today I just don't get. I'm sorry, like the shaved head thing. Okay, we'll move on here. But here's the deal. What they did is they pumped fertile hormones, pheromones, into the room when the men were looking at your more plain Jane, less interesting, we'll say, individuals in comparison to the extremely highly rated beautiful women. And guess who the men were more interested in? They were interested in the women when the fertile pheromones were something that was being pumped into the air, something that they could smell. And they were less interested when that wasn't the case. And there are other studies showing women similarly, when they're on the pill, will smell the sweaty T-shirts, not the men, just the sweaty T-shirts of men who have moved around in their T-shirts. And when women are on the pill, they're more interested in successful, competent, reliable, and responsible people. But when they're on the pill, they're interested more so in people who don't have their lives together, who they're lazy, and we could go on and on. But it's really fascinating. We're completely changing how men and women are interested in interacting with one another when you're on the pill. The third reason why you shouldn't take the birth control pill is that many people don't recognize this. Almost all hormonal contraception can function as an abortifacient. Now, this is very important. I'm just going to list a handful of hormonal contraceptives that function as abortifacients. The pill, Ella, Norplant, Depo-Provera, Plan B, which is known as the morning after pill, Previn, the patch, Ortho-Evra, IUD, yes, an IUD, even a NuvaRing, and Lunel. So some of these barrier method in terms of contraception things can also function as abortifacients. Now, what is an abortifacient? Well, there's a difference between an abortifacient and a contraceptive. You see, a contraceptive prevents a sperm and egg from ever meeting. An abortifacient ends the life of an already created new distinct human being that's already been created. How? Well, when you're on hormonal contraception, it creates a hostile environment that tries to prevent sperm and egg from ever meeting, that tries to prevent ovulation from occurring, so the woman doesn't even ovulate. And then it also is so powerful, it's working that in the event that a baby does start to develop, that fertilization, conception truly does occur, well, that it prevents that child from continuing to develop. How so? Well, number one, mucuses in the fallopian tube, hormonal impact. It creates a hostile hormonal environment when the baby needs a proper hormonal complementarity in order for that baby to develop. That's the whole reason why every single day a woman is a different chemical makeup. Hence her emotions change throughout the month, because her whole cycle throughout the month is orienting toward a complementarity toward the capacity to carry a child. And when it doesn't, that's when the shedding of the uterus occurs, hence creating the new cycle. So a woman's whole chemical makeup throughout the month is oriented toward the potential of having a child. Now, what happens is babies can still develop when hormonal contraception is used, but the chemical environment is hostile, and it creates it so that the baby gets stuck in the fallopian tube. It can create it so that the chemical makeup isn't proper, and so that the baby dies very early. This, my friend, is still an abortion, and not a lot of women know that this is abortion. We've got to tell the truth. In fact, I was talking to one doctor some years ago, and she was saying, I work in a secular practice, and I tell my girls when they come in that I don't prescribe hormonal contraception when they ask. And should I take a piece of paper and I draw a house? And she said, a lot of people think that by taking hormonal contraception, you have a house and the door is shut, and a baby can never enter the house. She said, but the reality is, as she said, you should leave that door open to the house, because that's what contraception is. A baby still could enter into your house, but what you don't realize is that the house doesn't have the right environment for the baby. And so it's like setting a bomb on the baby inside of the home. And she said, I want you to know this, because I think most women, when they take the pill, don't know this, and they actually don't want this to happen. And she said almost every single time in a secular practice, that woman says she does not want birth control anymore. She said it's very rare that she tells me she's going to go somewhere else and find someone else who will prescribe her birth control. Why? Because women don't want to kill their babies. It's the truth of the matter. They are put in situations, cultural situations, that justify and pressure them into this type of decision, and they think they have no choice, which is why pro-abortion is not pro-choice, and we need to stop calling it that. And so that, my friend, is another great reason why we need to tell people the truth about contraception. Most women don't know. Number 4, hormonal contraception causes blood clots. Many women do not get the truth with regard to this. And I think that it's important that we recognize the seriousness of this. In fact, I'm going to give you one example. About 10 or so years ago, Olympic-bound athlete Meghan Henry's athletic career completely ended because she was on birth control and she had experienced severe blood clots that prevented her from competing in the Olympics. It destroyed her Olympic career. I don't want to see that for anyone. We talk about how birth control is supposed to be the only way that women can have an education, a career, or a family in their terms. No, birth control is destroying Not just the lives of women, but also the lives of children, and their moms don't know it. The fifth reason why we should not accept birth control is another interpersonal reason. And recognize everything I've said so far intentionally hasn't had to do with faith. And I share that for just a moment, and let me tell you why. Actually, I'll tell you why in a moment, because let's just stick with me here for the fifth reason. You shouldn't take birth control because it tells men they can use you without fully accepting you or committing their life to you and taking responsibility. Essentially telling them, you can use me without any expectations. And it tells a man that it's okay to abandon me because I don't expect you to stick around to take care of me, and I don't expect you to stick around to take care of my baby. That's very important to recognize. In fact, birth control, it's true. Patrick just commented. He said, I think birth control has increased affairs and infidelity. It has. Follow the court cases. We had Obergefell versus Hodges, which decriminalized hormonal contraception. As soon as you take babies out of sex, next thing you know, you could take sex outside of marriage. What was the next significant court case? I'm sorry, I just said Obergefell versus Hodges. We had Griswold versus Connecticut, I think. I'm confusing it in my head. But we had the decriminalization of hormonal contraception. Just a few years later, we then had universal acceptance following the state of California of no-fault divorce. Now, when we had no-fault divorce, what happened? We took babies out of sex with hormonal contraception, and then we took sex outside of marriage because you could do it now without having the consequence of a child, therefore increasing the capacity for affairs and infidelity. So follow the logic. You take babies out of sex, you take sex outside of marriage. Well, next thing you know, you need the fail-safe. Just a few years later, we now have abortion, the backup birth control, because we've now increased infidelity, we've increased affairs, we've increased single motherhood. You need the fail-safe because we've completely destroyed the institution of marriage, one man, one woman, babies inside marriage that protected women and protected babies and gave men responsibility. Why are men floundering today? Go back 60 years. Look at what we did. Follow the court cases. It all follows. And when you completely destroy what marriage is, that babies belong in marriage, that couples stay together, well, no wonder we have Obergefell versus Hodges, which is the Supreme Court case in 2016, that ended up opening the door for what? So-called, quote, same-sex marriage. We lost sight of what marriage was. And that's why we have a third-wave feminism that says there's no difference between men and women. And so I'll just conclude with this. When discussing why you shouldn't take birth control, I just gave you 5 reasons. If you missed them, head over to relevantradio.com/trending. Subscribe. The podcast will be available tonight. I didn't use faith today when discussing this, and it's very important for a moment because many people aren't ready to hear that. But ultimately, all 5 of these reasons tell you it's physically bad for your body. It's bad for relationships. It's bad for women. It's bad for babies. All of these are reasons that the church upholds why we shouldn't be engaging in contraception. Now, the church gives even more reason and it gives theological explanations. But here's the deal. Science and the social sciences complement what the church teaches, and they always have. We just need to be willing to listen and to do the research so that we can help tell other people the truth about things such as birth control or living together, as we talked about yesterday on Trending. I'll be right back here on Trending, and we're going to be discussing crazy story. Crazy story. This mother who got pregnant. And I think it's funny to talk about after discussing contraception. Again, while she was already pregnant with twins. I'll be right back.
Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
If you missed it, I just gave 5 reasons why you shouldn't take birth control. Secular reasons that do complement our faith, but you don't have to bring up faith. If you wanted to have kind of something in your back pocket to discuss, take notes, give a listen, head over to relevantradio.com/trending where you can subscribe to the podcast. The show will be available tonight. And by the way, if you didn't catch the episode, it is Pride Month. And I think Pride Month has come back with a true and intense vengeance. Because they didn't get to have their Pride Month celebrations and indoctrination camps last year because of COVID. In fact, just a brief story here. So I went over to my sister-in-law's house this weekend and said, oh gosh, she said, I've been hiding in my house all day. I said, why? And she said, well, the kids next door are having a lemonade stand. And I'm sitting here like not getting the logic here. And she said, well, here's the deal. Their mom is super, quote, I guess you could say progressive. She's like hardcore pro-LGBTQ. And she is doing her due diligence during Pride Month, and she's having her 5-year-old and 7-year-old host the lemonade stand, and all the money from the lemonade stand is going to an LGBTQ nonprofit. And all the money from the kids' lemonade stand, they're also selling LGBTQ children's pride books. And she said, so yesterday I was standing outside with my baby girl and her 2 adorable little boys who I love come running up and saying, will you come tomorrow to my lemonade stand? Will you come and buy some lemonade? Of course she wants to buy lemonade from the neighbor boys. And sure, some might argue, you know what? It's about the kid. It's not about this stupid agenda. But look it. This was the bottom line, and this is the argument I made, and I expanded on it, and you need to listen. Head over to the podcast. We'll post a link in the show notes today, relevantradio.com/trending, how we should respond as Catholics to Pride Month. It's about children. We are forcing this whole idea on children, and it's much bigger than this whole thing right here, but this is a perfect example to show you how this has become about kids. And now poor people are having to hide from a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old so they don't have to go and support a pro-LGBTQ lemonade stand. Or so they don't have to go to the parent necessarily and say, hey, I want this money to go directly to your kid because I don't support that, which you could do, but this may create a huge controversy with clearly this is someone who's radicalized if they're forcing their kids to give their poor lemonade stand money to the LGBTQ movement. I'm just saying, let the kids have their money. If they want to donate it, so be it. But I don't think they have any idea what LGBTQ means. Good grief. Anyways, okay, this is the story you've been waiting for. Yes, it is true. A mother gets pregnant again while already pregnant with twins. So while she's pregnant, she got pregnant again. Now, her story has been trending. The babies, 3 babies, just came home this week. Very exciting for their family. The babies are healthy, doing great. They were released from the NICU after a 60-day stay in the NICU. And this is just a fantastic story. The babies' names are Georgie, Vivian, and Ivy. And these 3 little girls are absolutely adorable. Now, their mom has become rather popular on Instagram and TikTok under the name Taming Triplets. We don't know her real name, but that's what she's going by online as she shares her story. And she's been documenting the case of her 3 sweet little baby girls. Incredible story. Okay, let me explain to you how this happens, because you're saying, Timmerie, that's impossible. You can't get pregnant while you're already pregnant. Yes, you can. In extremely rare cases. Now, no, in this instance, it was not an experience of in vitro fertilization or artificial insemination or any of that. This is a legit natural 3 pregnancies. So here's what happened. It's called superfetation. It's a rare occasion where you get pregnant. So in this case, Taming Triplets' mom got pregnant with twins. Now, she had a second menstrual cycle, while she was pregnant, and fertilization occurred. So this 3rd baby was conceived 10 days later. 10 days later. You guys, talk about super triplets. This youngest triplet's got 2 older siblings, and they're technically, I guess you could say, not triplets, even though they share the same birthday. Pretty incredible. But the story goes further in this. Not only is this a rare occasion, a natural pregnancy, these are also people of faith. They're grateful for the great gifts they've been given. And here's the deal. This was the medical professional's response when they discovered that these babies were triplets and what happened. They offered her what is referred to, same thing as what is referred to in vitro fertilization, quote, selective reduction. Now, I was actually just explaining this to a priest friend of mine who he said, I always knew IVF was wrong, but I had no idea of what you're talking about, quote, selective reduction. Selective reduction is abortion. That's where multiple babies are developing in utero, each with its own distinct genetic makeup. We even know at the moment of conception, known as fertilization, same thing, the eye color, hair color, sex, characteristics, skin tone, so much is present at that moment of conception. And it's so important that we recognize this unique and unrepeatable life. It's incredible. And so here's a doctor offering selective reduction. And he encourages teeming triplets mom to get genetic testing so that they can test for which of the three triplets is the least likely to be healthy, and that one they can, quote, selectively reduce, aka abort. That's right. Thank God, praise the Lord, this mom was not interested. She said this, even if they did have an issue, we were going to love them no matter what. So when I was pregnant, growing up in the pro-life movement, I knew that there were a lot of tests and various things that were going to be offered that essentially promote a pro-abortion mindset, always giving the option, the out, in order to choose abortion as you want, such as genetic testing. Genetic testing isn't something that just helps you determine whether or not this child is going to have various health issues. Genetic testing was created and is intentionally used as a means of population control, as a means of eugenics, and as a means to promote abortion in the culture. Yes, that is true. Now, here's the deal. Genetic testing in utero is not always correct. And incredible developments occur while babies are in the womb, leading to even various health issues that are happening in utero to work themselves out, heal, and for the baby to further develop while in the womb. And it's very important to recognize. For example, when we had an ultrasound, let's see, how far along would I have been? Let's see, April, May, June. Around 3 months, there was a detection that something was wrong with the baby's heart. That there was a point during the ultrasound where the baby's heart stopped beating for a period of time that was longer than comfortable. Yes, startling. But also, babies have extreme heart irregularity. Now, depending on the doctor and the medical professional I was with, they could take multiple approaches to that. Carefully monitoring and paying attention to the baby's heartbeat, testing and making sure that the hormonal makeup of what was going on in my body was complementary to the pregnancy. There are various things they could do. They could even go for that anatomy scan earlier, potentially. Or they could say something's wrong with your baby's heart and you might want to consider aborting your child now, since it seems to be that your child's heart isn't developing correctly and has issues. And your child will be born with heart issues. That's another perspective, and that's exactly the perspective that very often happens in the medical professional. In fact, I know women who they go with anxiety into this genetic testing. Why? Because, well, what if my baby has Down syndrome? What am I going to do? You see, that's the exact attitude that some of this genetic testing and even the anatomy scan can create. Well, my baby's legs are too small. My baby's measuring too small. My baby might have Down syndrome. Over and over again, I've known pro-life Catholic people of faith say, I'm really nervous about my genetic scan and the outcome because I don't know what I'm going to do if something's wrong. What if my baby has Down syndrome? What if my baby has autism? And on multiple occasions, I've looked at moms and I've said, number one, if something is wrong, you're going to have the baby just like you planned to before. This is a baby you love. Number two, you have to recognize that babies have an incredible capacity to heal, to grow, and to develop in the womb. And anything often can be worked out while in utero. And some of this genetic testing is also evasive for the child in the womb, and it's important to recognize. I did not do any genetic testing on my baby, and to be quite frank, when I went through with the anatomy scan, it was required for the place where I was delivering, I ended up having this feeling as they were measuring so intensely every bit and piece of my baby that at a certain point my child was being put through a sense of scrutiny. And I kept thinking, here's my child on this big screen. We're watching the video of the baby moving. We're seeing the 3D, the 4D. And I'm thinking, wow, incredible. At the same time, I sat there almost in tears because I thought, there could be moms and dads and doctors sitting right here in the same room who saw, you know what? Part of that baby looked a little too small. You might want to reconsider your options. Those are the conversations that people are having with moms and dads every day. Which is why it's so important that we see pro-life doctors. Why it's important. We tell incredible stories of this mother who got pregnant again while pregnant with twins. If you didn't hear it, head over to relevantradio.com/trending to hear the podcast, to hear that explanation. It is wild. But here's what I respect. This woman, known as teaming triplets, the babies just came home from the hospital, were in the NICU for 60 days. Guess what? She has a massive following online and of young people. Anyone from young adults to teenagers. Why do you think that is? I think it's because young people are amazed that a woman can love and care for 3 children unconditionally, reject abortion, and still be joyful and loving about it, even in the face of the challenges that it has proposed. We need to be more pro-life and tell incredible pro-life stories such as these. Join me tomorrow with Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He's the top law enforcement trainer in the nation, and he wants to talk to you about sleep and give advice for new college graduates.